scenes of over 30,000 people marching in one spot in Brisbane really was heartbreaking for anyone who has actually lost their job or had to close down their business because of coronavirus. I mean, in Queensland, we've made substantial sacrifices to do what we've been asked to do by the Palaszczuk government, and yet Annastacia Palaszczuk, in fact, her government encouraged people to go to the protest, and it's really gobsmacking, Peter, and it's very disappointing. At the moment in Queensland, we can only have 20 people attend a restaurant, yet there were 30,000 people gathering in one spot. I mean, look, it just is nonsensical that the Premier has let this happen in Queensland.
Well, the Premier herself, though, she was against the protests as far as I can tell. But doesn't it show that there are different rules for different people, though?
Well, I'm not sure that the Premier made that very clear to people. The Premier certainly didn't do anything to discourage people from going to that protest. Look, we all need to be grown-ups here. Let's remember, for Anzac Day, we actually all did the right thing. We stood in our driveways and we remembered those who have served for us. I mean, that is a very worthy cause. In Queensland, we stood and we lit candles individually and put, photos all over social media respecting those people who have lost their lives to domestic violence. So there's ways that we can certainly look out for worthy causes. But what this has done, to have 30,000 people in the centre of Brisbane with the Palaszczuk government doing effectively nothing to stop it, has really set us back here in Queensland.
How do you tell businesses that they have to have restrictions now? And how do you fine people?
Well, this is the big question, and that's what Annastacia Palaszczuk is going to have to explain to the people of Queensland, Peter. I mean, let's remember, right now, Annastacia Palaszczuk has said that our borders will be shut, possibly until September or even later. We've got tourism businesses who are just screaming out for assistance right now. Queensland relies so heavily on our interstate travellers. 80% of our interstate tourism dollar actually comes from New South Wales and Victoria. And yet the Premier's got these strict restrictions. We can only have 20 people at a restaurant. Our borders are still closed. We've got barely anyone can go to a funeral, which is just heartbreaking, and the same for weddings. But yet we're allowed to have 30,000 people in the street. What concerns me, Peter, is everyone that has done the right thing is now going to be questioning why should they follow the rules.
If let's say in 2 weeks' time, given the incubation period of COVID-19, let's say there is no outbreak, would that be an indication that it's open season now, borders should open, there should be no restrictions at restaurants?
Well, that's a question that certainly the Premiers are going to have to answer. And Annastacia Palaszczuk has let 30,000 people march in the street. And so as business owners, they would be rightfully saying, what are you going to do now to open up the state and relax those rules? And that's exactly what I'm sure the Premier will be looking for, that health advice, if that is the case.
The Premier does say, though, that when it comes to the borders, that her internal polling and the messages that she is receiving suggests that people want the borders to remain shut. So what are your constituents telling you about that?
Well, Peter, my constituents are telling me that they want the Premier to give them the certainty and the consistency in the rules. And that is, if the Premier has said the borders should open in July, according to the government's own roadmap, rather than 2 weeks later flip-flopping and pushing it out to September, people are telling me they want the certainty around when the borders will open so that they can plan. Now, I was down at the Gold Coast late last week, and I can tell you, businesses, people on the street, they want to see the government actually respecting them and reopening the borders like they said they would in July. Look, I think the Premier's missed this one. People across Queensland are screaming to get back. We know that this, we can't afford to have the health crisis turn into an economic crisis. We've got thousands, tens of thousands of people out of jobs, and businesses that rely upon the tourism industry, especially in those winter months, who are closing and are screaming out for the Premier to do the right thing and listen to those businesses so they can secure those jobs for thousands of Queenslanders. OK,
just a couple of quick ones. Deb, this shark attack that took place yesterday, I know it was in northern New South Wales, but are you, well, it involved a Queenslander, the person who died was a Queenslander. Are you satisfied with the protective measures that are in place in Queensland beaches?
Well, look, first of all, my heart goes out to the family. This is just such a tragic case, and the friends and the other surfers who tried to help there. I mean, it's terribly, terribly sad. In Queensland, we do have a shark control program, and it is important that it remains that way. I genuinely believe we have to put our swimmers and people before sharks, and that's why I protested so loudly and last year when the Palaszczuk government took the shark control program away from the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park. Now, it has been put back in, but it's nonsensical that in Queensland that we get rid of that program. We need to keep and maintain the shark net program that we have in Queensland. In fact, we can look to the future around smart drum lines and looking at other technologies such as drones to make sure we're doing everything we can to protect people in the water.
Well, just finally, one should always treat polls with a degree of caution, but have you got a spring in your step following that YouGov poll yesterday?
Well, look, we've got a lot of work to do to get Queensland working again, and that's exactly what I'm doing each and every day. We've got a big, bold, ambitious plan to make sure that we can kickstart this economy again, and that's exactly what I'll be doing. And whether that's around the new Bradfield scheme in Queensland, building the second M1, getting our hospitals and education system back working again, because that's what people in Queensland
do you believe that can actually be
for.
achieved? I mean, we've spoken about the Bradfield scheme a fair bit on this program, both at state and federal level. Do you believe that can actually be achieved?
Look, I absolutely do, and that's why I've been sitting down with Sir Leah Hilscher and Sir Frank Moore, who are architects of this new Bradfield scheme. It is vitally important that we do capture that water and then push it west. I believe it is very ambitious, it's very bold, but I know we can do it. Look, Queensland deserves to have a bit of ambition back in this great state. Peter, we need it for the agricultural sector, we need it for jobs, we need it for the hydroelectricity that'll come with it. And there's nothing wrong with being a bit big and bold and having a vision for this great state, and that's why I can't wait to get Queensland working again.